You are listening to www.integralnaked.org.
Hi.
Hi, I'm a couples psychotherapist.
Okay.
And I have found that there's a lot of sexual problems between my clients. And it has to do with like an agentic kind of thing where fantasy is involved.
Yeah.
You know, and then there's no communion.
Yeah.
And also, there's a lot of like sexual and aggressive things that go on, like in different degrees, like sadomasochistic things that you don't know where pleasure and pain, you know. And then sometimes I supervise with other psychotherapists. They tell me, "No, that's bad, you know, get rid of it." And the other side is, "No, let it be, everything, you know, whatever gets you off, it's okay." You know? So I think that, you know, I'm very confused. I don't know what would be integral.
It does tend, in the upper right quadrant, what we try to do is look at the biological components that contribute to men and women's attitudes and approach to sexuality. And it doesn't mean biology is destiny. And so we're allowed to look at this without pigeonholing people, or if you happen to have a female body, it doesn't mean you're stuck with this, because the other three quadrants can amplify it, neutralize it, or reverse it. Culture in particular plays a lot of this. But there's just a lot of evidence, if you just get out of the sort of cultural construction of reality, which is way overdone, just simple empirical scientific research on the human body and what hormones, testosterone, oxytocin, estrogen do. It plays a large part in how people, the moments that they're faced with, as in the ongoing stream of awareness. And the upper right quadrant contributes something. And if it's testosterone, it's trouble. And there is a phrase in The Brief History of Everything, and some of you might know, which actually became kind of famous. It was a T-shirt. Yeah, that one. Testosterone has two and only two drives: fuck it or kill it. Sometimes they get confused, don't they? And that's sadomasochism. And that's the really downside of male sexuality. It can be very scary. Serial sexual male murders almost always male. And every now and then a female does it just to show that, you know, you can. But, which is good. So, but mostly it's just kind of a male specialty. And there is a kind of inherent sadomasochism to that. There's a kind of dominance to it. There can be aggression combined with that. And that's not necessarily bad if it's in a context of the other quadrants. So it's not just, I'm talking about men right now, generally. So it's not just that it's all okay or it's all bad. There are pathological versions of that. When it's way excessive, way overblown, disconnected, like say just agenic and disconnected from relationships, it tends to get really problematic. Women sometimes have a hard time coming to terms with the fact that males have just, you know, they're going to fantasize all the time. It's often going to be about other women. That's the way it is for most men. It doesn't mean anything. Women have a hard time understanding how radically meaningless sex can be for a male. It's just so hard for a woman to understand. And so men are good at lying instantly about it. It's just, you know, so did you have sex with her? No. But it's so fast, it's disarming. You know, honey, how could I, I can't believe you would say something like that. And it's just sort of natural, it comes with a Y chromosome, you know. And women are kind of like, and women, so what's important for a man is to be able to plug that biology into these other contexts. And there's a pre-personal, personal, and transpersonal version of that. And so you can take that sex and aggression, which is very pre-personal and power and egocentric, and then raise it up to a concern and a care and an energy for the relationship, and then transmute it into a world-centric care of, in a sense, aggressively wanting to love and care for all sentient beings. And so there's a way of working with that energy. There's a pathological version of that where, like I say, it's just way overblown and disconnected. And the extreme version, it's actually done in real life. And then you really do have sort of murders and serial murders and so on. Women, on the other hand, tend, because of estrogen and oxytocin, I'm talking about just the upper right now, not the way they're socialized. It's an entirely different type of relation to sexuality. Once a woman gets pregnant, for example, there is no Darwinian reason for her to continue to have sex. She can't pass on more of her genetic material by having more sex. The man, on the other hand, there's every reason for him to continue to have sex because he can pass on his genetic material the more sex he has. So you get the double standard, and it's not a cultural thing, it's a biological thing. So what women are concerned with, they tend to not fantasize about other men very often, for example. Well, if they do, that's fine. But they really are focused around the man in their life, and that's very important for them. When the woman's pregnant, she's always sure of who the mother is. Although there are jokes about, cognitively impaired women saying good news, bad news. Bad news is I'm pregnant. Good news is I'm not the mother. But generally, the mother knows exactly who the mother is. So there's never any doubt that her DNA is being passed on. The father never knows for sure. Never. Now, that's why men get crazy. Because the men are always watching their women. Because just in the upper right now, we're not talking about anything else. Because the man wants to know, if he's going to protect that woman, it better goddamn be his DNA. And so men get crazy about, and just about sex. Whereas a woman, it's to her advantage if she's 9 months pregnant, she can't go out and kill the bear and get food. It's to her Darwinian advantage to have somebody protect her. So it's to her advantage to basically find a powerful male, who's often older, has wealth, and so on. It's not bad that some women say, they want a provider. And so money and status and all of that is a legitimate upper right biological component for a woman's sexuality. So, and of course, it's exaggerated as well, too. In one of the films I saw recently, they're at a party, and the guy goes up and talks to the woman, and he starts to talk to her, and she says, "What kind of car do you drive?" And he goes, "What?" She says, "What kind of car do you drive?" And he says, "A Mustang." She goes, "Oh, okay." And then he keeps talking. It's like just the end of that. But for the woman, it's to have a powerful man protect her while she does that. So a woman will get upset if a man gets involved with another woman in an emotional, meaningful way, because it means it could take him away from protecting her. Whereas the man gets upset if the woman has anything looking like sex with another man. So you always hear the same thing if somebody's caught with it. If they're in a relationship and the woman has some sort of, looks like an affair, the man says one thing. He will say one thing. Did you fuck him? Did you touch his dick? Did he touch? That's all he wants to know. The woman always says the same thing. Do you love her? And that's what's going on. That's the two fundamental things. Now, I'm talking about just the biology of it. Just the Darwinian reasons, Because if you touched his dick, now that means my DNA might not get passed on, and so I'm not going to have anything to do with it. Now, it can become really problematic in couples therapy, because if a woman does seem to have an affair with another man, the man's biology disconnects from her. It's a very difficult thing to deal with. And his body stops loving her body, even though his heart and emotions might love her. So you really have to work with that. It's a very, very difficult issue. The woman, on the other hand, if the man has an affair, first of all, it sort of like comes with the territory. But so women are a little bit more easy about that, but they fundamentally want to know, it was meaningless. You really love me. And a woman can sort of deal, it's extremely hard, but can deal with it if the man can really convince her that he really loves her, and it's not. Because she still now is convinced she knows who the DNA is. So that's not an issue. The issue is who's going to protect the child and do it. So those are the two, this is kind of the biology of that. And there's a pathological version of both of them. But now that doesn't mean that that's the way you should respond or the only way to respond. Culture, lower left, has a lot to do with it. The lower right, the institutions. men and women have different relationships in foraging, horticultural, agrarian, industrial. So that plays a role. In the upper left, your own psychology. You can override biology. But it's still there. It's a component rising all the time. And men have to deal with it all the time. There was a study in Harvard. This is pre-AIDS because it was a study done on gay men and gay women because what they wanted to say was a sociobiological study. And the idea was if we want to see what men and women are like, let's see what they do when left to their own devices. So let's study what men do with men and what women do with women. So they looked at the sexually active young gay male and sexually active young lesbians. And they found that the average number of partners for the sexually active gay male was 345 a year. And the average number of partners for lesbian was one partner every 4.7 years. So put these two things together and watch what happens. This is a prescription for hell. And it's a constant. How on earth do you get these together and deal with it? So couples therapy in the upper right is just taking these influences into account and helping men and women see that that's what is going on with them. And that it's hard for them to change, but that within those limitations, the man can really convince the woman that he really sincerely loves her, even though he's going to have fantasies. And if he says he isn't, he's lying. And lying is not good, although it is kind of difficult because women always say, now tell me the truth. And as soon as a man tells the truth, they go, ah! I knew it, you wretch, you scum, you fuck, you... And so men are reluctant to tell the truth. No, honey, no, no. And women would explain to men what's going on, but it takes too long. But having just a compassionate understanding of that, and then if there are pathologies within it, working on those. And then putting it into, particularly in the upper left, and there's the whole psychology of how they react to that, the shadow elements, and particularly, not to overdwell on it, but the early relationships with the parents, because it really sets it. If the young girl has things with mom and dad, it really kind of can imprint her, and the same with the young boy. So that the classic Freudian mommy and daddy stuff is still a component in the upper left, and deal with that. So it's a little bit complex, but it's also kind of fun.